Although the 2020 Tokyo Olympics is in full swing, not everything important in the sporting world has been taking place in Japan. In fact, just a few days ago, the Milwaukee Bucks made history by defeating the Phoenix Suns by a very slim margin, resulting in them being crowned the reigning champions of the NBA in 6 games overall. But as a fan of the sport, what do you need to know about this historic win? And are there any other headlines you should be keeping update with in the world of basketball? Well, whether you were right there watching or you just want to know more about the current happenings of the National Basketball Association, you've come to the right place, as we're about to explore some of the biggest stories in rotation at the moment. So strap yourselves in and get ready for a bumpy ride, as things are about to get exciting. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss out on any of the new videos we post. 1. Things are looking up for the Milwaukee Bucks. For those of you who haven't been paying attention, last Tuesday night was a pretty big one for the Milwaukee Bucks, who ended up taking the championship title from the Phoenix Suns in front of a home crowd of around 65,000 screaming fans. The final score was a pretty slim one at 105-98, but the Bucks had the Suns on the rope from start to finish. What makes this victory taste even sweeter for the Bucks is the fact they haven't taken a championship title in 50 years, making this a scenario that the majority of Bucks fans have only experienced once in their lives. What better way to achieve this championship with such an action-packed series? Remember, the Bucks didn't start the series out too well, losing the first 2 games to the disappointment of fans. But then something changed in the team, who seemed to have had a fire lit on them. They took this motivation and turned it into a winning streak of 4 straight games, clinching the title to disbelief of their support. After having one of the best series performances of his life, Bucks forward Giannis Antetokounmpo was crowned the most valuable player of the competition, which makes sense considering how he finished things off, with 50 points and 14 rebounds in this final game. This was, after all, a record-break pace, with him becoming the first player since Bob Pettit in 1958 ever scored 50 points in an NBA final. Without Giannis, the Milwaukee Bucks would not be sitting with their championship rings on at the moment. When asked about his incredible performance, Giannis had the following to say: "Obviously, I wanted to get the job done, but that's my stubborn side. It's easy to go somewhere and go win a championship with somebody else, but this is the hard way to do it. This is the way to do it, and we did it." Giannis was referring to his decision to sign an extension with the Bucks at the beginning of the season, even though other arguably bigger teams were calling his name. As it turns out, this was the best decision he had ever made for himself. Staying loyal had its benefits, with Giannis making it over to his family on the sidelines, who could be seen celebrating alongside him. Born to Nigerian immigrants in Greece back in December of 1994, Giannis has previously spoken out about just how important his family is to him. This was repeated by the MVP when he was interviewed after the game. When asked what motivated him to work hard and aim for the win, Giannis responded by saying, "This is for my mom. She works extremely hard every day for me to be in this position, and she never pressured me to do other things. This is for my dad. He's watching from above, and he can see it. This is for my significant other. Every day she helps me be a better person. She lets me do what I'm supposed to do. She takes care of my son, and for my brothers." But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, especially Phoenix Suns fans, and the man who had never been closer to a championship win, Chris Paul, who is currently 36 years old and likely playing his last championship game as point guard for the Suns. While this might only be the beginning for Giannis, the same cannot be said for Paul, who has been regarded as one of the best point guards in the history of the game, but has had the NBA championship title elude him for the entirety of his career. Never before has he come so close to tasting what it would feel like to leave a champion, and unfortunately for him, Giannis was there to snatch victory right in the hands of the Suns. There's no doubt that the loss hit Paul hard, who could be seen taking a short walk of dejection back to the changing room without saying a word. Reporters were able to catch up with him after he had taken a breather, though, which resulted in him saying, "You're just trying to figure out what you could have done more. It's tough. Great group of guys. Hell of a season. But this one is gonna hurt for a while." It was actually the Athletic's Jovan Buha who summed the situation up perfectly in an interview later that evening. When asked about what he thought Paul was feeling, he answered by saying that Paul's bleary-eyed look said more than he could. This was the closest he had been to a championship in his storied 16-year career, but ultimately, he was as far from his goal as ever, his season concluding the same way it always has. Ultimately, Tuesday night meant a record win for Milwaukee and nothing but intense sadness for one of the greatest point guards of all time, who will most likely never taste a championship with his career being on the verge of coming to an end. But hey, that's just the way the game goes. And who knows, maybe Paul does have some more kick in the engine to soar to another championship game. He's an excellent player after all, but will have to defeat the likes of Giannis if ever wants a taste of what it feels like to wear that championship ring on his finger. 2. Team USA has a terrible start in Tokyo. Although the U.S. men's basketball team has been the talk of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, it looks like they might have been a bit overhyped. This isn't surprising considering how massive the National Basketball Association has become, and honestly speaking, people just expect Americans to be better than everyone else when it comes to sports that are ultimately made in the United States. But, as we mentioned, the start of the U.S. men's team was a bit rocky, seeing them losing out to France in the very first game with a score of 83-76. This was an almost historic loss for the United States as well, who had a 25-game winning streak in the first moment they competed in the 2004 Olympic Games a while back. This came as a shock to everyone watching and has caused many to question what on earth is happening to motivate other teams to no longer fear the Americans. Damian Lillard, NBA fans will know from his time as a point guard for the Portland Trail Blazers, offered a pretty good outlook on how the Olympic Games changes people. According to the 31-year-old American, who is participating in his first Olympic Games to date, forward NBA players are playing better in the Olympics than they ever did in the NBA because of the freedom that the Olympic court grants them. When discussing the loss to France, he explained this further by saying, "And you know who we see each night sometimes in the NBA, they are completely different when they play for their countries. They got more freedom. The comfort level is obvious. So we put ourselves in a dogfight and they made plays to win it." The crazy thing about this defeat is that France only has 5 active NBA players on its roster down in Tokyo, with most of them being reserves in the form of Utah Jazz center Rudy Gobert and New York Knicks guard Frank Ntilikina. Lillard has hit the nail on the head, as both of these players have been overshadowed in the NBA by their American teammates, most of whom weren't good enough to make it onto the U.S. men's basketball team. But we don't believe that Lillard is correct about freedom being the true reason for their incredible performance at the Tokyo Olympics this year. The real reason behind their success is passion, which is unfortunately something that most of the American teams have been lacking at the games. This is unfortunately a sign of the times, with many of the teams being overhyped and creating far too much relaxation for their own good. We've seen this in the U.S. women's gymnastics team as well, with Simone Biles making blunders that she's never been imagined to make before. Even Nyjah Houston bailed during the first round of skateboarding, missing out on the gold medal and securing a 6th place finish. Does that mean that it's all over for the Americans at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics though? It most certainly is too early to tell, but with so many competitors representing the country, we still believe that the United States will be a force to be reckoned with. In the realm of basketball, the men's team will work hard to make up for the deficit that they now find themselves in. Maybe this loss is precisely what they needed to wake up and smell the roses. What do you think? Be sure to let us know in the comments section down below.